I'm Tracy Sabol. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, rising tensions, another round of attacks in the Middle East and Ukraine. We have reaction. Abortion in America. Vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance says the Trump administration would veto a nationwide abortion ban. A pro-life professor responds. Follow the leader. Pope Francis reminds the faithful of a path that can bring us joy. And making their point, how an ancient structure once commissioned by the Egyptians became a symbol of Christianity. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us. Our top story tonight, the White House says that it is working to avoid a wider war in the Middle East. Missile strikes across the Israeli border threaten to make the situation worse. We've also seen an escalation of attacks between Russia and Ukraine. Both conflicts represent a big cause for concern. Explosions fill the sky over northern Israel as it protects itself from the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah. This time, Israel struck first in what it described as a preemptive operation.
It probably has disrupted Hezbollah's plans for an offensive, but Hezbollah has a very large arsenal of missiles and rockets. So I wouldn't suggest that we're out of the woods yet in terms of a Hezbollah attack on Israel.
And that is what we've seen today, more back and forth strikes. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan calls on all parties in the region to work towards de-escalation and stability.
We have been concerned about the conflict escalating into an all-out regional war since October 7th, and we have worked round the clock with partners and allies, moving military assets, engaging in intensive diplomacy, both publicly and privately behind the scenes to avert that outcome.
The Israeli military also released video of its ongoing war against Hamas in Gaza. But the war in the Middle East isn't the only hot spot. Russia launched a barrage of missiles and drones against Ukraine.
It was one of the heaviest strikes, a combined one. More than 100 missiles of various types and about 100 Shahed drones. And like most previous Russian strikes, this one was just as vile, targeting critical civilian infrastructure.
Some Ukrainians sought shelter in the underground train system, even singing to stay positive. An earlier Russian attack against a hotel killed a British safety advisor working with a team of Reuters journalists. President Joe Biden writes, "Make no mistake, Russia will not prevail in this conflict. The independent people of Ukraine will prevail, and the United States, our allies and our partners, will continue to stand with them every step of the way." While the apparent collapse of a Gaza ceasefire and hostage release deal is spurring new fears on Capitol Hill that a major escalation in the Middle East is just around the corner. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales joins us now in the studio with the latest. Eric.
Well, good evening, Tracy. Yes, Congress is away from Washington for their August break, but lawmakers are keeping a very close eye on the developments in the Middle East following airstrikes between Israel and Hezbollah over the weekend and even today. Some are critical, but they all say that the crisis needs to end.
This just underscores the emergency. We need to put an end to this war. We need to stop all the bombing, get the hostages back home, spend real resources on humanitarian relief in Gaza.
Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell issued a statement blaming Tehran. Quote, Iran's violent influence is a cancer on the Middle East, from Yemen to Iraq to Syria to Gaza to Israel to Lebanon. Hezbollah is the most malignant form of this cancer, and its leaders bear responsibility for perpetuating suffering in Lebanon, Syria, and Israel alike. Until Tehran faces meaningful consequences, it is foolish to expect its deadly and destabilizing influence to subside. Congressman Chip Roy tells me the U.S. isn't doing enough to help Israel.
Israel is doing the job we're supposed to be doing, too. They're on the front lines pushing back against Iran, trying to make sure that Iran doesn't become a nuclear state, trying to make sure that we're not allowing the Iranian influences to continue to undermine our national security and destabilize the world.
Estimates vary on the number of hostages still held by Hamas. Senator Lindsey Graham says the way to get them out is to put pressure on Iran.
I would hold Iran responsible for their well-being. If I were the state of Israel, I would tell the Ayatollah, if these people do not come home alive, the ones that are left alive, and if we don't get the bodies of the fallen, we're going to blow up your oil refineries.
Senator Bernie Sanders opposes Israel's continued war in Gaza that has led to more than 130,000 casualties, according to the Gaza Health Ministry.
I happen to think that we should not be giving another nickel to Netanyahu's right-wing extremist government. They certainly had a right to defend themselves against the atrocious Hamas attack. They never had the right, do not have the right, to go to war against the entire Palestinian people.
Another issue, Congress has a jammed schedule when it returns after Labor Day, addressing the Middle East tensions and possibly funding more military aid to Israel. Will be competing, that is, against spending bills for next year and keeping the government past the September deadline to avoid a government shutdown. It's something that we're going to be watching very closely. Tracy.
All right. Thank you so much for that report, Eric. And for more on the situation in the Middle East, let's bring in Gaith Al-Omari, Senior Fellow at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. Gaith, good to be with you again. We just heard from lawmakers weigh in on the situation in the Middle East. What is your biggest concern right now after what we saw transpire over the weekend?
I mean, I am actually less worried about the Lebanese front. It seems Hezbollah is not interested in escalation, but Iran has other proxies that it might mobilize. We have the Iranian-backed Houthi militias in Yemen, who have already targeted Israel. Iran itself has vowed to attack Israel in response to Israel's killing of Hamas's leader, Ismail Haniyeh, in Tehran. So things are still extremely volatile, and I suspect that the next few days we'll see some more attacks. So the question is, will they be done in a small scale as we saw this weekend in Lebanon, or are they going to go all out and then drag us all into a war? It's completely unpredictable.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that question, Gaith. I mean, do you think there are still fears, that is, of an all-out regional war?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, look, first of all, you have the Houthis, who are, let's say, less than a responsible actor. I mean, just recently, they bombed the oil tanker that's going to create a huge environmental problem in the Red Sea. So these are not ones who are calibrating, but the Iranians themselves. The Iranians also benefit from disruptions. Now, they have to calibrate their attack in ways that also do not harm them. But there are enough actors in the region who will benefit from escalation. By the way, Hamas itself will benefit from the escalation. One of the objectives of Hamas's leader, Yahya Sinwar, on October 7th was to ignite a regional war, and he will be doing everything that in his power to make this happen. So we're definitely not out of the woods yet. Things are still very, very volatile.
Yeah, and as we know, the recent high-level talks in Cairo did not end with a peace deal or release of hostages. However, discussions continue at a lower level. Are you optimistic that a deal still can be reached?
Unfortunately, I'm not. And unfortunately, look, I mean, if you look at both sides, I mean, this round, I would say most of the blame, when I talk to Egyptian, Qatari, and even American officials, would say on Israel. Israel is putting new conditions. But if you look at it analytically today, neither Netanyahu nor Hamas have an interest today in a ceasefire, because they both feel that time is on their side. Hamas is hoping for a regional war that would let off some of the pressure, and Netanyahu feels that his military strategy is putting more pressure on Hamas. The U.S. has no interest in collapsing the talks, because if the talks collapse, then we go into a real full escalation. So we're having this kind of, holding pattern of low-level talks, but no one is expecting these to produce anything.
Okay, we're almost out of time here, but how do you think the Biden administration is handling this situation?
Look, strategically, I think they're doing it well by sending 2 carrier strike groups, by sending a nuclear submarine. They sent a very clear message to Iran. I think part of the reason that Hezbollah did not escalate too much is because of that. But unfortunately, as of yet, they don't have a regional strategy. We are deterring, but we are not being proactive in terms of just diminishing Iran's capabilities. Unless Iran feels that its own assets, not its proxies, but its own assets are at risk, then it will feel that its disruptive action is cost-free. And so far, we have not created the sense that Iran itself is under threat.
Yeah, and I guess we will simply just wait and watch and pray. Gaith, always good to be with you. Thank you so much for weighing in.
Thank you.
All right, now to Pakistan, where at least 38 people were killed by gunmen in 3 different attacks. Mourners gathered following one of the deadliest days of violence in the southwestern portion of the country. Officials say the largest attack came as people were shot after being taken from buses and other vehicles. The military says more than a dozen security forces members were killed responding to the strikes. No group has immediately claimed responsibility. However, the attacks came hours after an outlawed separatist group warned people to stay away from highways. French authorities arrested the CEO of the popular messaging app Telegram. They claim the site is used for money laundering and drug trafficking. Pavel Durov, known as the Mark Zuckerberg of Russia, created the highly encrypted platform as a messaging app without censorship. It now has more than 800 million users worldwide. Reports say the Russian embassy in France is working to release Durov. French President Emmanuel Macron defended the arrest, saying on X, formerly known as Twitter, France is deeply committed to freedom of expression and communication. The arrest took place as part of an ongoing judicial investigation. It is in no way a political decision. The third anniversary of a deadly attack in Afghanistan turns political. Former President Donald Trump blames the American deaths not only on President Joe Biden, but also on Vice President Kamala Harris.
And because of that event, we did so badly that Russia went in and invaded Ukraine. Israel was attacked, as you know, on October 7th. People don't respect us. They don't respect us anymore as a country.
Earlier, Trump attended a wreath-laying ceremony with the victims' families at Arlington National Cemetery. They mourned the 13 U.S. troops who were killed in a bombing at the Kabul airport's Abbey Gate. Vice President Harris released a statement saying, quote, "Today and every day, I mourn and honor them. My prayers are with their families and loved ones." Pope Francis met with families of victims of the devastating 2020 Beirut port explosion, offering them words of support and entrusting them to the Virgin Mary. The explosion killed more than 200 people and injured thousands. In his meeting with families, the Holy Father said that they are not alone and supported their search for truth and justice. In renewing his call for a truce in the Middle East, he declared that Lebanon must remain a project for peace. Sad, we have a lot more still to come here on EWTN News Nightly, including ready to veto, analysis of what presidential nominee J.D. Vance had to say about a possible federal abortion ban. Back, a group of bipartisan lawmakers looking into the assassination attempt against former President Donald Trump spent the day in Butler, Pennsylvania, the scene of the shooting. While back here in Washington, D.C., House Republicans held a hearing of their own with former Secret Service agents about what changes need to take place within the agency.
This is going to be a full, thorough congressional investigation. We're going to start from the very beginning, look at site selection, command and control, perimeter security, whether or not the Secret Service had adequate resources that day, and also look at decision making.
That there are critical failures that need to be identified so that the American people can understand the transparency of it, but also to raise the questions and awarenesses of why.
Congressman Mills pledged to fund a parallel independent investigation into the attempted assassination of former President Trump and expressed disappointment at not being selected to sit on the task force. Well, during his appearance on a Sunday talk show, Republican vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance said that if former President Trump is elected in November and a national abortion ban reached the White House, President Trump would veto it. Speaking on Meet the Press, the Catholic senator from Ohio added Donald Trump wants to end the culture war on this particular topic. California wants to have a different abortion policy than Ohio. Then California needs to respect Ohio, and Ohio has to respect California. The line of questioning came in response to earlier statements from Senator Lindsey Graham advocating for a national ban. In 2022, the Supreme Court eliminated the constitutional so-called right to an abortion with the Dobbs decision. And joining us now is Dr. Ken Craycraft, professor of moral theology at Mount St. Mary's Seminary in Cincinnati, Ohio. He is also the author of the book Citizens Yet Strangers, Living Authentically Catholic in a Divided America. Dr. Craycraft, always good to see you. Thank you so much for coming back on. A lot to get to, but first, let's talk more about the recent interview with J.D. Vance. He also said, as we mentioned, that he and Trump wanted to end their culture war on abortion. Your thoughts on that? Is that realistic, and is abortion simply a culture war issue?
Yeah, I don't think this is the way to end the culture war. I think this is the way to further foment the culture war. If we want to end the culture war on abortion, we have to do something that is national in scope, not prescind from national questions. So I think what former President Trump and Senator J.D. Vance are advocating now is going to escalate, not de-escalate, the culture war over abortion. And you're right, it is a culture war issue. And I think that even aside from any kind of legislation, and I'm not even sure what national legislation would look like, we Catholics have to understand that this is a hearts and mind issue before it's a legal one. Yes, the legal aspect is important. Yes, the political aspect is important. But we need leadership, and somebody like J.D. Vance, who is a practicing Catholic, needs to provide that leadership, and it's very disappointing that so far in this campaign he's not doing that.
Yeah, Ken, what's your overall take on how the Trump-Vance team is handling the abortion issue right now?
I think that they're trying to win votes by softening their stand on abortion, but that's not going to work because they're not going to get any Democrat votes anyway, or swing votes that are thinking Democrat anyway. And what they're going to do is lose Republican votes. So I don't think this is a winning issue for them. They think it is, but I don't think it is. In fact, as a matter of fact, I think it's less. It's going to result in them getting less votes, and it's going to result in Catholics looking either at writing candidates or third-party alternatives to the two major parties. So if their strategy in this revised abortion stand, both by President Trump and Senator Vance, is to win votes, Catholic votes, conservative Christian votes, I don't think it's going to work. In fact, I think they're going to lose votes, and they're not going to pick up net votes from the other side because those people are not going to vote for Trump and Vance anyway. So I think it's a losing strategy. In addition, it's a losing political strategy, in addition to being a disappointing moral statement from both former President Trump and Senator Vance.
Yeah, and quickly before we run out of time, let's talk about the other side now. Vice President Harris and Tim Walz, they're pretty clear on where they stand when it comes to abortion. In fact, I know you wrote an article for First Things magazine and wrote, quote, a Harris-Walz presidency would be noteworthy, not simply for their extremity of their abortion and gender policies, but also for the fanatical zealousness with which they pursue them. Talk to us more about that and remind us on their stance on abortion.
Yeah, well, Vice President Harris has said that she wants to so-called codify Roe v. Wade as a national policy, as a national legislative measure, that it would reintroduce and reaffirm what Roe v. Wade stood for before it was overturned. And she has a ready ally in Governor Walz because, as governor of Minnesota, he has instituted the most extreme abortion laws of any state in the country, including allowing infanticide for botched abortions. They actually changed the legislation, which he signed, saying that a physician does not have to take care of the life of a child born as a result of a botched abortion, but only has to care for it, which is another way of saying the child can be allowed to die by starvation or by exposure, which is a gruesome policy, but that's the policy in Minnesota. And of course, that's the policy that Governor Walz, as if he becomes vice president, would advocate as vice president. And again, he would have a ready ally in his running mate, Vice President Harris, because she has made it very clear that that's her policy as well. A vigorous national policy which would so-called reinstate Roe v. Wade or codify Roe v. Wade. And so we have, on the one hand, we have extremists who are very enthusiastic and energetic about abortion. And on the other side, we have two candidates who are cool about abortion and who really seem to want to wash their hands of it. And that really is the way that it's setting up this election cycle.
Ken, that being said, what advice would you give us Catholic voters as we head into this election?
I think in this election, we have to do two things. First of all, as I said earlier, we have to be consistent witnesses to the protection of unborn life and life generally. But secondly, we have to start thinking about whether we can be chained to a two-party system as Catholic voters. There are alternatives out there. To be sure, they're small, and to be sure they're fledgling, but we Catholics have to declare to both parties that we're not going to be chained to a two-party system if neither of those parties represents the values that we hold as Catholics, especially when it comes to preserving life. And I think this election might be a time for Catholics to send a signal that we're not going to be chained to a two-party system, but rather going to express our own voice about what we believe are the true values that are consistent with Catholic moral theology and Catholic witness.
And Dr. Craycraft, always good to be with you. Thank you so much much for weighing in. God bless.
Thank you.
Up next on EWTN News Nightly, Live, Laugh, Love. Pope Francis weighs in on what happens when we stay close to Christ. Plus, what do Egyptian obelisks have to do with Christianity? We have the answer and that story from Rome. Pope Francis says that the answer to finding joy, love, and life is found in Jesus.
Non è facile per loro capire, ma sono fedeli.
At his Sunday address at the Vatican, the Holy Father reminded the faithful that the disciples did not always understand our Lord and his parables, but they had faith in him, and their fidelity to Jesus and his mission is, quote, a beautiful expression. The Holy Father also prayed for the persecuted Christians in Nicaragua, asking them to never lose hope in our Lord. The countdown is on for the longest trip of the pontificate of Pope Francis. One of his stops in Southeast Asia will be the tiny country of Timor-Leste. EWTN Vatican News correspondent Colin Flynn recently sat down with the country's president for a preview.
Probably the most Catholic country in the world, with the exception of the Vatican City, because I'm told by the Vatican that the Vatican City is the most Catholic in the world. I have some doubts, but because it's Vatican telling you, so I accept. So we
the Vatican tell you, so you accept.
We are number two, only because they are telling me that.
Did they tell you this when you went there? Because you were there in January of this year. You met Pope Francis in the Apostolic Palace. What was the meeting like between the two of you?
I brought to him a lot of Timor coffee. I was surprised the Protocol Vatican let me carry those coffee into the meeting with the Pope.
They flagged you right through.
That was very nice of them. And then I told His Holiness, Your Holiness, being an Argentinian, you probably drink coffee. He said, yes, I do every day. And then I told him, I had this audacity, which maybe it was not appropriate, but I told him, His Holiness, please don't drink the Brazilian coffee, don't drink the Colombian coffee. And then he said, and how about the Costa Rican coffee? Don't drink that either. Just drink the Timor coffee. It's the best in the world. Yeah. Your Holiness, if in Timor-Leste, my people know you are drinking only Timor coffee, they are so happy.
They would be so happy.
I said, can I say that you drink only the Timor coffee? He said, yes, you can say that.
Well, that's an exclusive for us now that the Pope only drinks, from that moment on, coffee from East Timor.
Yes, that's what the Pope said. But, then I joke with the Pope in Spanish and said, pero esto una gran mentira. Esto is a big lie, and but it's a good lie.
Finally tonight, did you know there are more Egyptian obelisks standing in Rome than in Egypt? In total, the Eternal City houses 13. As EWTN correspondent Magdalena Valenska-Reedy explains, the four-sided pillars that become more narrow toward the top were once commissioned by pharaohs before becoming a symbol of Christianity.
Obelisks played a prominent role in ancient Egyptian religion. They were placed at the entrances of temples and tombs. When Roman forces conquered Egypt in 30 before Christ, records show they brought 48 of the stone structures back with them.
Over the centuries, there has been a fascination with both the Egyptian and classical worlds, which persisted into the 17th and the 18th centuries. These interests were, of course, always reinterpreted through a Christian lens. This is why obelisks, one of the great symbols of Rome's architecture and grandiosity, are always crowned with a cross.
The cross symbolizes the triumph of Christianity over paganism. At the end of the 16th century, Pope Sixtus V had the idea to use obelisks as landmarks to guide pilgrims around Rome.
Pope Sixtus V was the one who initiated the erection of these obelisks in a classical style, primarily to serve as basis for the cross atop each obelisk. While they incorporate classical elements, their true culmination is in the Christian cross, symbolizing the reaffirmation of Rome's Christianity and Catholic heritage.
The Vatican obelisk is probably the most famous ancient Roman obelisk. Made in Egypt under the Roman rule, it bears no hieroglyphic inscriptions. It is nicknamed the Witness, as it stands on the spot where tradition holds that St. Peter was crucified upside down in 64 AD. The Lateran obelisk stands at almost 106 feet tall and weighs 502 short tons, making it the largest Egyptian structure ever erected. It is crowned with the heraldic charges of Sixtus V's coat of arms, namely a star, 3 mounts and 4 lions, each of which holds a pear in its right paw.
In this way, the Pope, both as head of the Church but also as a sovereign pontiff, manifested his authority. It is a symbol of magnificence, of political influence, and of asserting his authority over a territory and a population.
For pagans, obelisks were solar symbols representing a vital flow between heaven and earth and a way of communicating to the divine. Placed next to some of the greatest Catholic basilicas and squares, they have now become symbols of humanity reaching out to Christ. In Rome, Magdalena Wolinska-Riedi, EWTN News Nightly.
And we thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tracy Sabol. Good night and God bless.